My name is Daniel Carter, and I never believed in ghosts. That was before I spent a night inside St. Augustine's church. That had started as a dare. My friend Mark and I had always been fascinated by urban legends, and St. Augustine's had plenty. A 19th century church, abandoned for decades. It was said to be cursed after its last priest, Father Gabriel, vanished without a trace. Some say he was taken by the devil, others claim he never left. I should have walked away when I had the chance. The night was cold when I entered the church alone. Mark chickened out at the last minute, but I wasn't about to back down. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and my phone, I stepped inside. The wooden pews were coated in dust, the air thick with the scent of mildew and decay. My footsteps echoed through the hollow space, bouncing off the vaulted ceiling. A massive crucifix loomed over the altar, the face of Christ worn and chipped. Then I heard it, a whisper. It was faint, almost like the wind, but it came from the confession booth at the far end of the church. My breath hitched. Every instinct told me to run, but curiosity overpowered my fear. I approached the booth, heart hammering. The wooden door was slightly ajar. With a shaky hand, I pushed it open. Nothing. The booth was empty, save for a dusty Bible and a rotting cushion. I let out a nervous chuckle. My mind was playing tricks on me. Then the whisper returned right behind me. I spun around, flashlight shaking. The pews were empty, the church still, but the air had changed. It was heavier, charged with something unseen. A shadow moved near the altar. Not a trick of the light, something was there. I took a step forward, squinting. A figure stood near the pulpit, head bowed, draped in tattered robes. My mouth went dry. "Father Gabriel," I whispered. The figure twitched. Then it lifted its head. His face was wrong stretched, hollow eyes nothing but black pits. His mouth opened unnaturally wide, a guttural moan escaping his lips. The church doors slammed shut. My flashlight flickered, and the whispers grew louder. Overlapping voices speaking in a language I didn't understand. I bolted. The doors wouldn't budge. Cold hands brushed my neck. I screamed. Then, silence. When I turned around, the church was empty again. The whispers were gone. The figure had vanished. The doors creaked open on their own. I didn't hesitate, I ran, and never looked back. St. Augustine's still stands, abandoned, waiting. Some nights, if you listen closely, you can hear the whispers calling for someone new. My name is Henry Blackwood, and I've lived my entire life in this town. Most people know the story of St. James Church, the one on the hill. It's been abandoned for as long as I can remember, its towering spire visible from every corner of the town. The church was said to have been a place of great power once, filled with rituals and ceremonies that were never meant to be forgotten. I didn't believe any of it. That is, until I found the altar. It was on a rainy evening when I decided to explore the church, to see what secrets it held. The heavy iron doors creaked open with little effort, revealing a vast, empty space. The floor was covered in broken tiles, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew. The walls were adorned with faded frescoes, telling stories of saints and angels. But what caught my attention was the altar. It wasn't like any altar I had ever seen before. It was ancient, covered in strange symbols and markings that seemed to shift when I looked away. At the top of the altar, there was a stone basin, cracked and worn. The stone looked like it had been untouched for centuries, but I could feel a strange energy pulsing from it, calling to me. I couldn't resist as I approached the altar. The air grew colder, and the shadows in the church seemed to stretch. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched the basin. The moment I did, the ground beneath me shuddered. Suddenly, the church was alive. The candles around the altar flickered to life, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. The stone altar rumbled, and the symbols began to glow, pulsing with an eerie light, and then I heard a TA voice, whispering, low and guttural, "You should not have come." I spun around, but there was no one there. The air felt thick, like something was watching me, waiting. The shadows began to move, swirling around the church in unnatural patterns. The walls seemed to close in, and I could feel a pressure building in my chest. I turned back to the altar, and that's when I saw it. From the cracks in the stone basin, something was rising, something ancient, hungry, and alive. I tried to run, but the shadows held me in place. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could hear was the voice, growing louder, closer. "You woke me, Henry Blackwood." The altar cracked open, and the thing inside began to emerge. Shape was constantly shifting, like it had no true form. It was everywhere and nowhere, its eyes endless black voids, swallowing everything around it. And then, it spoke again. "Now you will join me." The ground beneath me cracked wide open, and everything pulled me in the shadows, the darkness, the very church itself. I woke up outside, but the altar was gone. The church was empty, silent, but I know it's still out there, waiting. And one day, I'll hear that voice again, and I won't be able to run. My name is Richard Clark, and I've always been fascinated by the unknown. That's why, when I first heard the rumors about the St. Martin's Church Choir, I was immediately intrigued. They said the choir had the most beautiful voices, so hauntingly perfect, they could make even the coldest hearts weep. But there was something more, something darker, hidden beneath the music. The choir had disappeared. The entire congregation had vanished without a trace. No one knew what happened, but it was said the last mass they performed was unlike any other, a mass that summoned something evil into the world. I didn't believe the stories. I never do, but I couldn't resist. I decided to investigate. The church, once grand, was now in ruin. The stained glass windows were shattered, and the doors creaked as I pushed them open. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the pews broken and scattered across the floor. But there was something in the air, something alive. I could hear it before I saw it. Whispers. Soft, melodic whispers, like a distant song. I followed the sound, my feet drawn toward the altar. As I got closer, I saw them, the choir. They were standing in the pews, their backs to me, their heads bowed. The robes they wore were tattered, but they still stood as though frozen in time. The whispers grew louder, blending into a single, perfect harmony that vibrated through my bones. Then, the choir turned. Their faces were pale, their eyes dark as if drained of life. Their mouths opened in perfect unison, and the song that came from them was not human. It was pure, unadulterated sorrow. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The song was pulling me, commanding me to stay. "Join us," they sang in a voice that was both a plea and a demand. I could feel their eyes on me, cold, hollow, seeing right through me. They were waiting. For what? "Join us," they repeated, louder now. I couldn't resist. I stepped closer, my body moving against my will. The song filled my head, drowning out all thoughts, all fears. And then, the walls began to bleed, red, thick, and dark. It poured from the stained glass windows, soaking the floors, turning the church into a scene from a nightmare. The choirs sang louder, their voices rising to a deafening crescendo, and I realized this wasn't just a choir. This was a summoning. The church was alive, feeding on their song, pulling me into its dark heart. I tried to scream, but my voice was lost in the endless music. The last thing I saw was their faces, empty, lifeless, and yet hungry. Then everything went dark. I woke up outside the church, lying in the grass, alone. But every night, I hear it, the song, the whispers, and I know, one day, I won't be able to resist anymore. My name is Evelyn Harper, and I never believed in curses. But I learned the hard way that some things are best left alone. St. Andrew's Church had been abandoned for over 60 years. The locals said it was cursed that on the night of the last Mass, something terrible happened. The priest, Father Jacob, had disappeared without a trace. Some said he vanished into the altar itself. Others said he was swallowed by the darkness. I didn't believe in curses. I didn't believe the rumors. That's why I went. I pushed open the church's heavy wooden doors. The scent of mildew and decayed would hit me instantly. The pews were still intact, though covered in layers of dust. The altar was a shadow in the distance, its details obscured by time. The air was thick, stagnant, and cold. But I was determined to find out the truth. As I stepped closer to the altar, I felt something, a pull, a whisper urging me forward. I ignored it, trying to focus on the peeling paintings and the crumbling stone. But the whisper came again. "Come closer." I froze. The voice was soft, almost melodic, but somehow wrong. The kind of wrong that nags at your bones. I couldn't stop myself. My feet moved toward the altar, each step heavy, as though the church itself was fighting against me. The whisper grew louder. "Father Jacob awaits." Then I saw it. A figure standing at the altar, cloaked in black. His face was hidden beneath a hood, but the air around him trembled. I should have turned back, but I didn't. I stepped into the altar's shadow, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. His face was wrong. It was Father Jacob's face, but it wasn't. His skin was stretched thin, and his eyes were hollow, sunken into the depths of his skull. His mouth twisted into a grotesque grin. "Welcome, child," he whispered, his voice now like sandpaper against my skin. The air grew heavy, suffocating. I tried to move, but my feet wouldn't obey. I could feel his hands, icy cold, pressing into my chest. The altar shuddered, and I heard the faintest sound, a crack, as if something beneath it was trying to break free. Then I felt it, a shift. In the air, a cold gust, as if the earth itself had exhaled. The church began to crumble, the walls cracking, the ceiling groaning. Father Jacob reached out, his eyes locking onto mine. "You shouldn't have come." In that instant, I knew the truth. The curse wasn't just a rumor. The church was alive, hungry, waiting, and it had been waiting for me. When I woke up, I was outside, lying in the damp grass. The church was gone. Nothing remained. But every time I close my eyes, I still hear his voice, and I know he's still waiting. My name is Jonathan Wells, and I have always hated church bells. There's something unsettling about them, how they echo through empty streets, how they always seem a little too loud, a little too persistent. St. Catherine's Church had been abandoned for decades, yet its bells still rang. No one knew why. No one dared to check, except me. It started at exactly 3:33 a.m. The deep, heavy toll of the bells shattered the silence of the night. I lived just a few blocks away, and for as long as I could remember, the town ignored it. But that night, I didn't. I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the church. The massive doors were unlocked, swinging open with an eerie creak. The inside was pristine, no dust, no cobwebs, as if someone had been taking care of it all these years. Then, the bells rang again. The sound came from above, from the belfry. My stomach twisted. There shouldn't have been anyone up there. I climbed the spiral staircase, my breath shallow. Every step felt heavier, as if the air itself were pushing against me. Then, I saw it. The ropes. They were moving on their own, pulling, stretching, ringing the bells with inhuman precision. But worse than that, Ty wasn't alone. Figures stood in the belfry, their backs to me. Dozens of them, motionless, silent. Then, in perfect unison, they turned. Their faces were wrung too smooth, too pale, their eyes sunken, empty, their mouths stretched wide in unnatural grins. And still, The bells rang. The figures moved toward me. I stumbled back, my head pounding with every toll of the bells. The walls of the belfry shifted, stretched, as if the church itself was swallowing me whole. Then, one of them spoke. "It is not yet your time." The next thing I knew, I was outside, lying on the church steps. The bells silent once more. But now, every night, at 3:33 a.m., I hear them ringing again, and I know one day, they'll be ringing for me. My name is Daniel Mercer, and I never believed in ghosts, at least, not until I attended a mass that was never meant for the living. Scene. Augustine's church had been abandoned for nearly a century. No one knew why. Just that one night, every priest and parishioner vanished without a trace. The doors were locked. The records were sealed. The town let it fade into history. But on the first Friday of every month, at exactly midnight, the doors would open on their own. I didn't believe the stories. That's why I went. The moment I stepped inside, the doors slammed shut behind me. The church was dimly lit by rows of candles that hadn't been there a moment ago. The pews were full, men and women dressed in old-fashioned clothes, their faces turned toward the altar, and at the pulpit stood the priest. His back was to me, but something about his posture was wrong. His shoulders were too sharp, his arms too long beneath his robes. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest like unseen hands. I wanted to leave, but my legs refused to move. Then, the priest spoke. "Let us pray." His voice was hollow, like it was coming from deep underground. The congregation responded in perfect unison, their voices layered. Distorted, too many voices for the number of people in the room. The candles flickered. The church breathed. The hymn started, slow and mournful, filling every inch of the space. The walls felt closer. The ceiling seemed higher. Then, the priest turned toward me. His face was stitched together, mismatched pieces of different people forming a grotesque mask of flesh. His mouth was open wide, yet the song still poured from him, an endless, deafening chant. The congregation turned too. Their faces were empty, just smooth, featureless skin. I ran. The moment I reached the doors, my vision blurred. The church shifted, the walls stretching, the candles melting into pools of black tar. The air buzzed with whispers, voices pleading, begging, "Stay." I threw myself at the doors. Darkness swallowed me whole, and then I was outside. The church was dark again. The doors were sealed. No candles, no voices, no congregation. But when I looked down at my hands, my skin felt wrong, like it didn't belong to me anymore. And now, every first Friday at midnight, I feel something pulling me back, calling me home. My name is Samuel Whitaker, and I used to love exploring old buildings. That changed the night I stepped into St. Cecilia's Church. It was an architectural marvel in its prima, grand cathedral known for its magnificent choir. But after a devastating fire in 1903, the church was abandoned. Or so I thought. I was drawn to it on a dare, armed with nothing but a flashlight and my phone. The moment I crossed the threshold, I knew I had made a mistake. The air inside was thick with the scent of burnt wood and something else, something rancid. Then, I heard it. A choir, soft at first, barely more than a hum, but growing stronger with every step I took. The voices were hauntingly beautiful, yet rung their harmonies slightly off, like an echo of something once pure, but now twisted. I should have left. Instead, I followed the sound, weaving through rows of crumbling pews. My flashlight flickered as I reached the altar. Then, I saw them. Figures standing in the choir loft, bathed in the dim glow of candlelight. Their robes were tattered, their faces obscured by shadows. But their mouths were wide open. No lips, no teeth, just gaping, black voids. And yet, they sang. The hymn grew louder, discordant, reverberating through the ruined church. My head throbbed, my vision blurred, my legs refused to move. Then, one of them turned toward me. Its hollow face twitched, as if trying to form words, and for the first time, the song stopped. Silence hung in the air. Then, a single voice spoke. Not aloud inside my head. Join us. I stumbled backward, the air around me growing dense, suffocating. The choir descended from the loft, their movements jerky, unnatural. I bolted. The moment I reached the entrance, the doors slammed shut. I pounded on them, screaming. The hymn started again, louder than before. My vision darkened, then silenced. I woke up outside, lying on the cracked stone steps, gasping for breath. The church was dark, silent, empty, but I know what I heard, and some nights, when the wind is just right, I still hear the hymn, calling for another voice. My name is Thomas Grayson, and I have never been a religious man. But when my mother passed, I found myself inside St. Jude's Church, searching for something comfort, maybe. What I found instead was something far worse. The church was nearly empty, just a few scattered figures lost in prayer. My footsteps echoed as I approached the confession booth. I hadn't confessed in years, but that night, I felt compelled. I stepped inside, pulling the wooden door shut behind me. Silence. Then, a voice, deep, raspy, wrong. What do you wish to confess, my child? I hesitated. Something felt off. The air was thick, the wooden walls too cold against my back. But I pushed the feeling aside. I have lost my faith, I admitted. I don't know what to believe anymore. The voice chuckled, not warmly, not kindly, mockingly. Oh, but belief is not lost. It is only taken. A shiver crawled down my spine. The candlelight flickered beyond the lattice screen, casting long shadows. Then, the priest shifted, his outline twisted, his shoulders stretching unnaturally wide. I could see him clearer now through the screen, his fingers long and gnarled, his face obscured beneath his hood. I should have left, but I couldn't move. Would you like to be forgiven? He asked. My throat was dry. Yes. The wood beneath me creaked. The air grew dense, pressing against my chest. The priest leaned closer, to the screen. Then confess everything. Something was behind me. I felt it, breath, cold and hungry, just inches from my neck. My hands trembled. The booth felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Then, I heard it, not from the priest, from the darkness behind me. Your sins are not yours to confess. A sharp pain sliced through my chest, something unseen pulling, tugging, taking. The door burst open, and suddenly, I was in the empty church once more. The confession booth was gone, no sign of the priest, no proof it had ever existed. I stumbled backward, my breath shallow. Then, I saw it. The booth's shadow remained, darker than it should have been, still there, even when nothing else was. I never went back, but sometimes, in the dead of night, I swear I hear that voice whispering from the darkness, confess everything. My name is Matthew Holloway, and I made the mistake of stepping into St. Dimphna's Church after dark. I thought it was abandoned. I was wrong. The church stood at the edge of town, hidden by towering oaks and years of neglect. Its doors were locked for as long as I could remember, but rumors swirled, whispers of a final mass held decades ago, one that no one ever left. That night, I found the doors wide open. A faint golden glow flickered inside, like candlelight. My curiosity got the best of me. I stepped through the archway, my footsteps echoing against the stone floor. The pews were filled with shadowy figures, their heads bowed, as if locked in silent prayer. A chill crept up my spine. The air was thick, suffocating. The congregation didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, the priest spoke. He stood at the altar, facing away from me, his voice a low, rhythmic chant. His robes were pristine, untouched by time. But something was wrong. His shadow stretched unnaturally long, moving out of sync with his body. I should have left. Instead, I inched forward, my heart hammering against my ribs. The priest's voice grew louder, his chant turning guttural, alien. The shadows in the pews shifted. I froze. A dozen heads turned toward me at once. Their faces were blurred, their eyes hollow pits of darkness. My breath caught in my throat. The priest finally turned. His face was a rotting skull, skin barely clinging to bone, his jaw unhinged, stretching impossibly wide, revealing a maw that was bottomless. The congregation stood, a deafening hymn erupted discordant, unnatural, shaking the very walls. The air grew thick with decay. My legs refused to move. Then, the priest reached for me. His bony fingers brushed my forehead, and suddenly, I was somewhere else. Rows of pews stretched infinitely in every direction, filled with figures locked in endless, silent prayer. A choir sang from nowhere, the same warped hymn looping over and over. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. Then, I woke up. I was outside, lying on the cold church steps, the doors sealed shut. Candlelight. No voices. Just silence. But I know what I saw, and every night since, I've heard the hymn in my dreams, calling me back. My name is Jonathan Reeves, and I have never been a religious man. But after what happened at St. Vincent's Chapel, I know that something beyond this world exists, something dark. St. Vincent's had been abandoned for nearly 50 years, yet the townspeople swore they could still hear its bells ringing at night. No one knew why. There were no records of services held there, no priests, no congregation, just a decaying structure that should have been silent. I didn't believe in curses, but I was curious. That's how I found myself pushing open the heavy, rotting doors of St. Vincent's at midnight. Inside, the chapel smelled of damp wood and something stale, like old incense that had lingered far too long. Moonlight filtered through the stained glass windows, casting eerie colors across the pews. Then, the bells rang. I nearly dropped my flashlight. The sound came from above, deep and thunderous, shaking the dust from the rafters. My breath caught in my throat. There was no way those bells could ring. The tower had collapsed decades ago. I should have left right then. Instead, I stepped forward, my footsteps muffled by a thick layer of dust. The altar was bare, except for an old, leather-bound book. Its pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but I could still read the name scrawled across the cover, Father Elias Grayson. The name struck a nerve. I had read about him. He was the last priest of St. Vincent's. He went mad, claiming he heard the bells calling to him, warning him of something coming. One night, he locked the doors and was never seen again. A cold breeze slithered through the chapel. The candles on the altar lit themselves. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. The bells rang again, louder this time, vibrating through my bones. The pews creaked as if unseen figures were taking their seats. Then, I saw him. A shadow stood near the pulpit, hunched and shaking. His robes were tattered, his face obscured beneath a hood. Slowly, he lifted his head. His eyes were missing. Dark, empty sockets stared at me, his mouth moving soundlessly. And yet, I heard his voice, a whisper in my mind. The bells never stopped. They never stop. The ground trembled. A deafening clang echoed as the bells rang once more, louder, faster, relentless. I covered my ears, stumbling backward. The figure twitched, his head jerking violently. Then, he screamed. The sound shattered. The stained glass. Shards rained down as the pews splintered, the walls groaning like the church itself was alive. I ran. The moment I crossed the threshold, the noise ceased. The night was still. The chapel was silent. But I swear, As I turned back one last time, I saw movement inside, a shadow standing in the ruins, waiting, and every night since, I've heard the bells calling for me.